Howdy folks, hope you're all having a good one, and welcome back to War Thunder with the mighty Jingles. As you can probably see, War Thunder inevitably got around to putting in modern jets. Well, these jets have been around a couple of decades now, but they're certainly more modern than aircraft like the F-4 Phantom or the MiG-21. Yes, War Thunder now has MiG-29s, Panavia Tornadoes and F-16 Fighting Falcons, such as the one being flown by Ego Peak Demon here. And of course, more modern jets also means more modern missiles. The F-16A here can carry the AIM-9L version of the Sidewinder, and this is a real game changer in War Thunder because this was the first all-aspect version of the Sidewinder dogfighting infrared heat-seeking guided missile, which basically means you didn't have to be behind the target in order to get a lock and a kill. And these things really did get kills. The first combat use of the AIM-9L Sidewinder was in the Gulf of Sidra incident in the early 1980s, where a couple of F-14 Tomcats got kills with this missile on a pair of Libyan Su-22s. But the first widespread use in combat of this missile was during the Falklands War, when the Royal Navy Harriers managed to achieve an 80% kill rate with every launch of the AIM-9L missile, a massive improvement over the 10 to 15% kill rate achieved with earlier generations of these missiles. A dramatic improvement in lethality over, well, anything that you've seen previously here in War Thunder. They are not foolproof, however. Oh no, far from it. And funnily enough, that's why you're going to be watching today's battle. And it's not going to be because of Ego Peak Demon here. You can see his F-16. I, by the way, refer to these aircraft as the Viper in the past, and people have been all over me in the comments. No, Jingles, it's not the Viper, it's the Fighting Falcon. Well, yes it is, but the pilots called it the Viper. Because when this aircraft was introduced, there was a very popular TV show on at the time, Battlestar Galactica, and the pilots, who apparently have very good imaginations, thought that the Falcon looked like the Colonial Viper. I don't quite see it myself, but the pilot's nickname for this aircraft is the Viper. Oh, and there are some replay bugs here, a little bit of stuttering that you've probably already noticed, but trust me, it's going to be worth it. Speaking of bugs, War Thunder's replay system is a little touchy. You may have noticed that Ego Peak Demon is being displayed on the enemy team, because even though he's the one that sent this replay in, for some reason when you fire it up, it defaults to the view of one of the enemy F-16s, not the guy who sent the replay in. So I actually had to record this battle multiple times, and it's just as well that I did, and you'll see why later. He's just ditched his external fuel tank to increase his maneuverability, got his first shot away against an enemy Su-22, spoofed by the Su-22's countermeasures. He's going again for a Harrier. Harrier starts dropping flares. The missile dives to catch the flares, buries itself in the ground. Like I said, these missiles are good, but they're not foolproof. The subsequent version of this missile, the AIM-9M, had improved discrimination against countermeasures. Oh, another little bit of replay stuttering there, sorry about that. And speaking of countermeasures, he managed to successfully spoof an incoming enemy heat-seeking missile. Shots away again and again, this time against the MiG-29. Nope, missed again. It was close, but like I said, not foolproof. 4 missiles fired, 2 remaining. Oh, horrible bit of stuttering there. I do apologise for this, but trust me, it is going to be worth it. 2 missiles remaining, ditches more flares, goes supersonic. Notice how his missiles are trying to lock onto the friendly F-16 before he manages to acquire a lock onto the enemy MiG-29. That's going to be important later. Actually, it's going to be important now, because there are only 3 members of the team left. And this is where, because I did have to record this multiple times in order to get the correct perspective, this is where we're going to switch to the perspective of the enemy team just for a moment. Enemy MiG-29 here, searching for targets. Friendly F-16, shot down by the enemy JA-37, better known as the Saab Viggen. As you can see, the MiG-29 still has plenty of missiles, and he's desperately trying to find something to use them on, while there are still living members of Ego Peak Demon's team to use them on. F-14A there, looking for the lock, trying to get within range, and the Harrier's closing in. Hang on a second, these missiles are locking onto everything but the enemy aircraft as the Harrier goes down. He's locked onto the F4 there. He's trying to get locked. Now that is Ego Peak Demon. And you might have noticed that the MiG-29 was locked onto the F-16, but the missile tracked the heat exhaust of the Sidewinder that the F-16 launched. Remember, these may be the most advanced versions of heat-seeking missiles available in War Thunder. I mean, the MiG-29 isn't firing Sidewinders, but they're firing the Russian version. But they're still heat-seekers. They'll still go after the closest available heat source, which can make it very, very dangerous to fire them into dogfights. No, you're tracking a friendly MiG-23. That is Ego Peak Demon in the F-16. He is now the only surviving member of his team. Oh, you just shot down the MiG-23. And you just shot down the friendly F-16. I think we deserve to see that from the perspective of the victim. Here he is. He's on Ego Peak Demon's tail. He's got 2 kills of his own already. Oh, friendly heat-seeking missile right up the tailpipe. There's the man responsible. Well, that was unfortunate. He's locking onto the flares now. You know, just a couple of seconds ago, this was a 1 versus 7 fight. Ego Peak Demon versus 7 enemy aircraft. And now, thanks entirely to the enemy team, it's a 1 versus 3 fight. 4 enemy aircraft shot down, and Ego Peak Demon had nothing to do with it. Only 3 enemy aircraft survived that extremely unfortunate dose of fratricide. The MiG-29, who was responsible for most of the team kills, the Saab Viggen, and this Harrier here, who's thinking, this is some bullshit, I'm getting out of here. And who can blame him? Meanwhile, Ego Peak Demon, 4 kills up without firing a single shot of his own. With the MiG-29 and the Saab Viggen hot on his tail. But, well, the F-16, it may only be a single-engine aircraft, as opposed to, you know, the twin-engine MiG-29. Although the Saab Viggen is a single-engine aircraft as well, but it's an extremely powerful engine, and it's a very light aircraft, so as long as he can avoid getting hit by gunfire, he's going to be able to open up the distance on these two, because he is definitely the fastest aircraft in this fight. And they are now outside of shooting range. They're inside dogfight and missile range, but they've got none left. Yes, the less said about that, the better. Of course, he's got no missiles left of his own either, and he ditched his drop tank earlier to make himself more manoeuvrable in dogfighting, but he hasn't actually scored any kills yet. Every single missile that he fired, he missed. He's drawn them back over his base. And that's, of course, the reason why they've quit, packed up and gone home. They don't want to risk getting shot down by the airbase and the aircraft defences. You notice he's deployed the air brakes here and some very, very interesting manoeuvres in order to slow himself down, because he was at supersonic speeds when he approached within a couple of kilometres of this airbase, so he does need to slow down drastically, otherwise that is going to be a, well, I believe we call them Jingles landing. And here we go. Still 1 against 3, but it's better than the 1 against 7 he was facing just a couple of minutes ago. We'd like to thank the enemy team, of course, you know, credit where credit's due, for this no longer being a 1 against 7 fight. That MiG-29 almost got an ace on team kills alone. And while the odds are still very much not in his favour, because the MiG-29, the Fulcrum there, and the JA-37, the Viggen, are almost certainly, and we saw the Harrier doing it, heading back to base to rearm and refuel. Although the idea of that MiG-29 with a full load of dogfighting missiles, that would not be making me feel particularly safe if I was on the enemy team. Don't get between him and his target, that's all I'm saying. The thing is, I mean, do you remember when the Sparrow was introduced, the semi-active radar homing missile? was introduced into War Thunder, everybody was saying, oh, the Sparrow doesn't work properly. It's because it's not fire and forget. Nobody, well, not nobody, but a lot of people did not realise that you have to keep the target locked up with your onboard radar in order for the Sparrow to track the target. And people were treating it incorrectly, like an AMRAAM, for example, the AIM 120, which is a fire and forget. You launch it, you lock the target up with your onboard radar just to feed targeting information to the missile, but once you fire the missile, its own onboard radar takes over. The Sparrow isn't like that. You have to keep the target locked up, and people didn't realise that, so they just thought, this missile isn't working properly, when in fact what was happening was they were just doing it wrong. And it was kind of understandable, because War Thunder, they did a terrible job of explaining how this brand new missile worked. They just, well, didn't explain it at all, so people got it wrong. Completely understandable. You can't really say that about these new versions of heat-seeking missiles, though. I mean, you know, the AIM-9L and the Soviet equivalent, I believe the Atoll. I can't remember exactly what the name of the Soviet equivalent is, but they both work the same way. They work the same way as every other heat-seeking missile that's been in the game for at least a year now. The only difference being that you don't have to be behind the target to get a lock. Being behind the target will improve the chances of the missile scoring a kill, but you don't have to be behind the target. That's why they're called all-aspect infrared homing missiles. They're smart enough to lock onto a heat source from the front. The important part of that phrase being a heat source. They're not really that fussy. And that's no different to the previous versions of these heat-seeking missiles. You have to be extremely careful firing these things into a dogfight, because unlike radar-guided missiles, where at least the initial targeting information is provided by your own onboard radar, where you have some choice over what you lock onto, the targeting information from a heat-seeking missile is fed to you in the cockpit by the heat-seeking head of the missile itself. You have some control over what it will lock onto, but it will always prefer the strongest heat source. And if you have 3 friendly targets jousting for the kill of the one enemy target ahead of them, and you're behind those 3 friendly targets, guess where the strongest heat source is going to be? Again, this is nothing new. You know, this is the way heat-seeking missiles have worked since forever. People seem to think, however, that these new versions of the all-aspect heat-seekers are some kind of magic I win button. They are fire and forget, but the important part there is that you don't forget what the strongest heat source is going to be. Head-on shot there against the poor old Harrier. Yep, he's down. That's actually Ego Peak Demon's first kill of this battle. 1 down, 2 to go. Just the MiG-29 and the Saab Viggen. They will both, of course, have rearmed. A fact that is probably making that Saab Viggen extremely nervous. Who can blame him? He would probably be well advised to not get between the MiG-29 and his target. Because that MiG-29 either doesn't know, ooh, that was close, or doesn't care how heat-seekers work. Ego Peak has whoa, that one was even closer. He's activated the Avenger order in order to get an idea of where his targets are. And up and over, there goes the Viggen, there's the MiG-29, he's got a better target lock on the MiG-29. Fox 2, missile away. MiG-29 ditching flares, but it looks like the missile is still tracking. He's got him. Popped another one just in case. Dropping chaff. The Saab Viggen, I don't know, might actually be relieved that the MiG-29 is no longer there. Certainly doesn't have to worry about friendly fire anymore, because now it is a one-on-one. Ego Peak Demon ditching countermeasures, spoofing all of the Viggen's missiles, and of course he is the faster of the 2 aircraft. And as long as the Viggen is out of missiles, he can afford to kick those afterburners in, open up the distance, and of course both of these aircraft are very, very manoeuvrable, and generally speaking in jet combat, certainly when jets were first introduced into the game, getting a distance of 5 kilometers or so away from the target that you wanted to turn around on was very dangerous, because it took so long for these aircraft to turn around that they catch you in a very, very disadvantageous position before you could complete the turn. But with the extreme manoeuvrability of aircraft like the F-16 Falcon, here comes another missile, spoofing countermeasures, return fire. Yep, they've both. It's kind of like watching medieval knights going at each other in a jousting tournament, isn't it? Well, we've got 2 missiles left. I don't know how many the Viggen has. They're going for it again. I'd imagine that in this position and at this range, if the Viggen still had a missile, he would have launched it. The fact that he hasn't is probably extremely good news for Ego Peak Demon, who does still have 2 missiles left. Opens up the distance. He's going to start making the turn. Probably wants to be about 5 kilometers away. No, he's going for it early. Here it comes. Or is he? No, he wants a bit more distance before he does it. Here it comes. Oh, I think he might have turned a bit early here. He's not going to be able to get a target lock. Wait, no, what's the Viggen doing? What? Oh, why would you do that? Well, it didn't allow him to get a missile lock, but this does allow him to get a shot with the guns. There's the hit. Oh, the Viggen's in a flat spin. Finishes him. He was probably not going to recover from that spin anyway, but the second dose of gunfire sealed the deal. Ego Peak Demon comes out of a 1 versus 7 as the sole survivor. Mostly, it has to be admitted, because the enemy team either didn't know or were too greedy for kills and didn't care about how exactly heat-seeking missiles worked. Either way, a win's a win. I'm sure Ego Peak Demon is not complaining, and that's it for today. Hope you enjoyed it, and as always, take care, and I'll catch you next time.